It's U of L Today on 93.9 The Ville. Here's your host, Mark Hebert.
And welcome to U of L Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville. So glad you are joining us. We've got a 30-minute show for you that hopefully will give you a little bit of information about the University of Louisville, all the great things going on at U of L, including the research, great students, programming at U of L. And so hopefully we can give you a little bit of inspiration and knowledge in the next 30 minutes. So coming up a little later in the show, U of L provides its expertise to dozens of Louisville businesses who are looking for employee training and professional development. We'll talk to a couple of ladies who are heading up that effort and tell you how your business can get services and help from U of L. Also, how can the story of Anne Frank help teach Louisville middle schoolers? A grant from the Jewish Heritage Foundation to U of L is helping U of L researchers figure that out. But first, how can school counselors who identify with the hip-hop culture help African-American students stay in school, graduate, and go to college? Well, two folks are here to explain just that. Ahmad Washington's a counseling professor in U of L's College of Education and Human Development, and Cassandra Webb is a former student at U of L who now works for the Louisville Urban League. So welcome to both of you.
How's it going?
It's going okay. All right. Well, tell me about this program and this research that you've got going on, Ahmad, regarding hip-hop culture and how counselors in schools can use that to help African-American kids.
I think it's important to make the public aware the first time I really fell in love with hip-hop. I was 11 years old. It was 1988, and I heard My Philosophy by Boogie Down Productions, and I knew at that time that this culture is something that I was extremely enamored with, and it was a couple years later that I knew that we would be inseparable. So I just think that's an important entry point that
so at 11 years old, you decided hip hop was cool, and you learned something.
It was cool, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But more than anything else, it was helping me to deal with these existential dilemmas that I was having, trying to figure out my place in the world as a racialized man in the South, young racialized African American male in the South, during the period of Reaganomics and the crack epidemic and things of that nature, and the war on drugs and the war on poverty. So all those things were really germane to who I was and the places that I wanted to be in life. And hip hop was just the soundtrack of my life. So in regards to my research interests, it's just really interesting that school counselors who have such close proximity to students, there isn't really a conversation within hip hop pedagogy about a voice that represents school counselors. So school counselors are working with students all the time to help promote their personal social development, their academic development, and their career aspirations. But nowhere in the hip-hop pedagogy literature can the voice of school counselors or school counselor educators be discerned or seen. And that's something that I want to disrupt by working with this fabulous woman and the good people over at the University of Louisville and the Urban League.
So, Cassandra, at the Urban League, what do you all do? I mean, I guess, how does this get to the ground? How do you link hip-hop culture that kids, middle schoolers are learning with the counselors, and how does that work in the school to get these kids further along and get them to stay in school? How does that work together?
Right. So the Louisville Urban League is a nonprofit social service agency that really focuses on advocacy as well as 5 values. So we work with housing, with education, with justice, with health, and with workforce. And so with that, I fall into the education part. So I'm the Youth Development and Education Coordinator at the Urban League. And so we work with middle school and high school students to get them ready for college. And with them getting ready for college or in life after high school with any options, they need to be well-rounded, right? So being able to know what's going on in the world and being able to apply what they see on a daily basis to their future and to the classroom. And so we really, when we work with youth on an everyday basis, we understand that hip-hop culture is a really important part of that, right? And so we met Dr. Ahmad Washington and we realized that his work with hip-hop in high school counselors and counselors in schools is important work for us to, in an easy partnership for us to create, because we have the youth in our building that are consuming hip hop, and then he is also working with counselors in the school building to see how hip hop can really be brought into how they work with their students. So.
Well, let's talk about that, Ahmad. Then how is hip-hop used in a school system? How does a counselor use it? And is it just for African-American kids that we're talking about here?
Absolutely not. My work focuses primarily with African-American students, but I don't think whatsoever that it's confined only because hip-hop is a global phenomenon. It's highly mediated. There's tremendous corporate influence, which means that people all over the world are consuming it. Its relevance to school counseling, if you think about it, school counselors are delivering individual counseling sessions, they're delivering group counseling sessions, they're delivering classroom guidance. And if you think about what the role of school counseling actually is, to elicit feedback, input, to create spaces where students can talk about a myriad of issues that impact them on a day-to-day basis, then what better mechanism to elicit their input than the music and the culture that they're already immersed in, right? So if you think about a group consisting of 6 to 8 students, rather than using some of these rather Eurocentric traditional ways of broaching conversation, I ask school counselors in professional developments all the time, how about just selecting a lyric or an artist that students really, really resonate with, and having them decipher the lyrics and talk about its meaningfulness and its relevance to their lives. And you see these like contorted faces.
Well, I probably do the same thing. But,
Right. And
but I'm a 56-year-old white guy, so you know.
Well, and the profession, the counseling profession, is comprised overwhelmingly by middle-class white women who have, quite frankly, been culturally encapsulated professionally, academically, and socially. So for the first time, these are the first times they're really grappling with the applicability and relevance, and whether or not there's any redeemable value in hip hop. So I've done professional developments in JCPS with all 3 levels, and it never fails that people come up asking me, like, I'm a white woman from Kentucky and I don't know how to do this. And I think that's the first step is what we talk about in school counseling is, before you can utilize this, you have to understand what is your relationship to the culture and how have you been socialized to see it through this very pathological and criminalized sort of lens. So that's the first thing that we need to overcome and recognize before we do anything around actual counseling skills.
We're talking with Ahmad Washington, who's a professor at the University of Louisville in the College of Education and Human Development, and also with Cassandra Webb, who's a UofL graduate and now works for the Louisville Urban League. And we're talking about how hip-hop can be used in schools to help kids move along, basically. So you're basically talking about reaching out to kids where they're at and something they're interested in to keep them interested in school. Is that the nuts and bolts of what you're doing here, Cassandra?
Yes. We are trying to very much be more relatable to youth because, once again, they do consume hip-hop culture. Most of them consume hip-hop culture on an everyday basis. And so if we know that through our after-school programs at the Urban League, we can do a first step where we can utilize hip-hop and the work Dr. Ahmad Washington has done into our after-school programs and start doing some activities and start doing some journaling and really see like what we can do with youth one-on-one.
Is it working?
Well, we had a sort of like a pilot this spring, and we had a couple of things this summer just recently, and we were talking about the sort of intersection of like political rap and some of the more high-profile things that have happened, police brutality, the Flint, Michigan water crisis, and as we start connecting and drawing parallels between the sorts of conversations and dialogues that groups like NWA and others were having about police brutality. These are groups and these are artists and these are lyrics that these students had never heard before because many of them, just about all of them, hadn't been born
young,
yet.
yeah.
Right. But they're coming into hip hop consciousness with people like Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole, who are sort of broaching these conversations and pushing them like very, very deliberately in their music. And so we can sort of track the evolution of the culture because the same things that they're wanting to engage and wanted to undermine in terms of like systemic and institutional oppression existed well before, hip hop as a culture, as a concept, actually existed.
All right, we need to wrap this up. Ahmad, you said you'd already talked to some counselors at some Louisville schools. So what's the next step? What are you hoping to do with this program, and what do you hope comes out of it at JCPS schools?
Well, I think that there are 2 prongs actually, and they coalesce, but they're different. What I'm doing with the school counselors comes up in my classrooms, but it also a more intentional work with school counselors and schools who are wanting to have more intentional programmatic efforts at their schools. And then there is the more practical, immediate work that we're doing together at the Urban League.
Right.
Cassandra?
And so the work at the Urban League, we are starting our hip hop and social sciences program in the fall. So it'll be starting up in the next few months. And that would be a weekly program for high school students that'll meet at the Urban League. And our goal is to really explore the history of hip hop as well as how we tie social sciences into hip hop. And so it'll be a fun time, and we're looking forward to starting it soon.
So I assume if some school counselors or a school principal or someone from JCPS wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that? If they're interested in getting some training, those kinds of things, how do they track you down?
Find me on Twitter. Find me on Twitter. And if you go to the University of Louisville website, find me under the College of Education, Department of Counseling and Human Development. I'm there.
Very good.
Right. And so if you have high school students that are interested in getting involved with our program at the Urban League with the mod, you can contact me at cwebb@lul.org.
Okay. Call the Louisville Urban League and ask for Cassandra or Ahmad Washington at the University of Louisville. Thank you both for being on the program. Very interesting stuff.
Appreciate it.
You may know that U of L has plenty of ties to local businesses, but you may not know that your boss is looking to U of L for professional and workforce training. Robbie Chitwood is the director of U of L's professional development. She's here with Virginia Denny of U of L, who consults with local businesses. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so what's available from U of L to help out our local businesses who may be looking for some sort of training, either for the executives or for the employees?
We really work across the spectrum, Mark. We work with individual customers as well as various organizations. That can be corporate customers, that can be working within the nonprofit sector or governmental agencies. We provide skill-based training, so we're looking to provide them with the knowledge and skills that they can apply immediately back on the work in their daily life in the workforce. We do this through a number of different ways. We have seminars, we have certificate programs, and then we also have customized learning solutions. That's clearly one of the most popular things that we do, which is work with organizations and customers to figure out what is their need and really build a solution around that.
That's Robbie Chitwood, by the way. Virginia Denny also. What are some practical things that businesses often come to you for? On the ground stuff that they say, I've got a problem with this in my business, I need some help, and they ask you for help.
We're convinced that ongoing learning in the workplace is a strategic advantage for companies today. So we encourage them to continuously ask, what's changing? What do people need to know and do differently in the workplace? Every time they answer that question, they're identifying learning needs. So it's very common for us to get requests for communication skills. Leadership is one of our primary purposes, and we come at that in very different ways depending on the company. Whether it was Zappos shoes when they were here, we would train them in very creative, interactive sorts of ways. We might get an executive team that wants to come in and work in very different ways. So it all depends on the situation and the needs at the time.
Well, is it a case where businesses come and say, I have a problem, I need your help? Is that what happens, or you tell me?
Absolutely. It can be that, and we have to be really careful about engaging around that because we're not a silver bullet. So we have to really distinguish between, is this a training issue or is this a performance issue that really needs to be dealt with differently? So we do a vetting process, work with the organizations and or the individual to really figure that out. Is it something that we really can help solve, and we choose wisely.
And we're really proud to be part of the University of Louisville because we're here to help the business community. It is our mission to provide that support rather than to seek out new business.
Yeah. I don't think most folks would recognize that the University of Louisville is available to business owners to help them in this way. I think most people think of the University of Louisville as doing research, educating students, obviously, but helping my business.
We are the best kept secret in town, Mark. Let me tell you.
Well, here's your chance to get some word out. So what would you tell folks? How should they track you down, or what specifically might they not be thinking about in their business? And you can plant that seed and say, you really ought to think about what's going on in the 21st century.
We really are looking for individuals that may be in career transition, may be readying for promotion, or may be already in a position where they feel overwhelmed. So we're able to help in a lot of different ways, but certainly we're instituting lifelong learning, and we know that doesn't stop with the traditional path of an undergraduate or graduate degree. In fact, most of the customers that we serve may be non-degreed. So again, they've been great individual contributors, and they've been promoted in the workplace, and now they find themselves having to figure out how to manage others. And so a lot of that is working with different tools and assessments. We have a great team of facilitators that are often subject matter experts. But again, the key is, are we allowing them to leave that day with something that they can use in the workplace immediately and apply? That's really the differentiator. It's not about theory and concepts, it's about tools that can help them better themselves and better their organizations.
And you also work with the Family Business Center in the School of Business, correct?
We do. We had a unique opportunity to collaborate with them to create a cohort-based program. Mark, if you can imagine, if we were brother, sister working in the workplace, we'd have potentially some communication issues that may differ than what we currently have as colleagues. So that's really what that program was developed for, was to identify the unique needs of individuals that are leaders within family businesses, whether they're family members or non-family members. So we're looking forward, in fact, we had a meeting yesterday, and we're looking forward to continuing that. It's focused on emerging leaders within those types of businesses.
Robbie mentioned, in Virginia, you do training. You actually go on site and do training for some of these
Yes.
businesses, correct? What do you find? Do you find, as Robbie said, that a lot of them do not have college degrees, a lot of the managers don't have college degrees, and now they've worked their way up, and here they are, but they may not know how to deal with people. They may not know how to deal with perhaps better technology. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yes, and it is a touching moment when we award University of Louisville certificates to these folks who may, for any number of reasons, not been able to get a degree. And they put these certificates on their walls. They're very proud of them. And we're reaching folks like that didn't get a degree. We have PhDs in the room. And it's the equalizer. These interpersonal skills, leadership skills, are the great equalizer. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have. It's how well you listen. There's lots of things that play into it beyond that degree.
Talking with Virginia Denny and Robbie Chitwood from UofL's Professional Development Core, I guess, and they go out and help businesses train their employees and train their managers on and educate them on future workforce, I guess, is the best way to put that. What have you found is the most difficult thing for you to do when a business picks up the phone and calls and says, here's what I need? Are there sometimes you have to say, I can't help you, or you need to go elsewhere?
It may be, again, we are focused really on the soft skills side, so interpersonal skill development and leadership development. So if we know that they are looking for something more technical in nature, we may refer them to another provider. So we certainly have a sweet spot and a role that we play, but we also help in a number of different ways with services. Virginia, for example, leads a lot of strategic planning sessions. We know that learning is really key to helping move initiatives forward and other strategic plans. So that's a service that she provides for our team for a number of different organizations. We really can work in many different ways.
How many businesses are you juggling at the same time?
Oh
How
my
many did we
goodness.
add last year?
In the past year, we've added over 90 organizations to our client portfolio,
really?
which has been fabulous. We've sought out opportunities, and many have showed up at our door, so to speak. But it really is a referral business. It's a relationship business. So when we do good work, we know that that's going to pay off in spades, and that there's going to be other opportunities that have presented themselves. So we feel very fortunate in that way. Fort Knox, as we know, is our neighbor here, very close in proximity to our campus. So we've been working a lot with the commands there, and we'll continue to do so. But we really do not distinguish between those that we do and do not work with. And we know that budgets can sometimes be a constraint. So we want to be able to fit their needs with what they can do. And we've been very successful with that, I feel like.
Very good. All right, we need to wrap this up. So why don't you give folks an idea of if there's a business owner out there who says, yes, I need some skills training, I need some PR and communication training. How do they get a hold of you?
It's a really easy process because we have so many options, and we're out on the web, and easily contacted by phone, where we can do an immediate consultation with them to find out what their needs are. And Robbie, you
So
were
what do they look
gonna-
for?
We're looking at louisville.edu/professional development. You can also call our office at 852-8571, and we can schedule an appointment. We're located out on Shelby campus, so we're easily accessible to the business community, and we have conferencing space there as well as other equipped classrooms, so we can do a lot more than just training and development. We can provide lots of different needs, service a lot of different needs for those companies.
Very good. And if you can't remember the phone numbers, or you're driving in your car right now, can't remember the phone numbers, can't remember the email address, probably if you go to UofL's webpage and search professional development, my guess is you'll probably come up with the Delphi Center or the Professional Development Office, correct?
Correct.
Okay, very good. All right, Robbie Chitwood and Virginia Denny from UofL, thanks so much. James Chisholm and Kathy Whitmore are both professors in the UofL College of Education and Human Development, and they've recently received a grant from the Jewish Heritage Fund to support a book they're writing related to the study of Anne Frank and teaching Anne Frank to kids in Louisville middle schools. Interesting. Well, welcome to both of you, first off.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks
James
for having
and
us.
Kathy. All right, well, tell me a little bit about this book project. Who wants to go first?
I'll start if that's
All
okay.
right, yep.
So our book emerges from a collaborative endeavor with the Kentucky Center for the Performing Arts, the Jewish Heritage Fund for Excellence, and the Arts Literacy Project at Brown University. And we're also working with 3 JCPS schools and a school in the Catholic Archdiocese of Louisville. And our collaborators were brought together by our colleague Jeff Jamner at the Kentucky Center, who wanted to find ways to promote the use of the arts to learn about the Holocaust and Anne Frank in our Louisville community. And the project is now in its 3rd year and has been featured in 8th grade classrooms for social studies, drama, and English language arts.
How do you use arts, Kathy, to teach about Anne Frank and the Holocaust?
Yeah, well, that's a big part of this project, and it's part of the innovative teaching methods that are being employed in the project. So the 4 classroom teachers have been working with arts educators to learn how to infuse drama, visual arts, music, sound, movement into helping kids understand texts that are usually only in print. So it's a big part of the project is understanding for us as researchers what the arts can afford young learners as they're especially learning about challenging topics like the Holocaust.
All right. Well, we all know who Anne Frank is. Perhaps we should go back one step and say, for listeners out there who may not, probably not too many that don't know, but who is Anne Frank?
Well, Anne Frank was a very competent and beautiful writer, among other things.
She was a teenager, though.
Absolutely, absolutely. Who hid with 7 other people in an annex in Amsterdam during the Holocaust, and wrote extensively and self-consciously about her experiences growing up. And these experiences resonate with many adolescents. That's why it's such a popular text. Even though it's a popular text, it's also a controversial text for many schools and in many communities. But we try to bring that text alive by encouraging and working with teachers and students to do things like tableau, which is a process drama technique that challenges people to use their bodies to convey their interpretations of meaning in a print text. So, for example, they create a frozen image that is their interpretation of what a particular passage might mean from Anne's diary, and thereby deeply understand it in different ways.
And you're doing this in middle schools at JCPS, right?
With 8th graders.
Okay, so Kathy, what schools are you in right now, and what are some of the practical applications, like James just talked about, that teachers are using to try and get the students to express themselves about what they're learning about Anne Frank?
Sure. Well, we're working with 4 middle schools, as James said. One is St. Francis, which is one of the Catholic private schools in town. And the 3 JCPS schools are No Middle School and
Western
Middle School, which is also an arts-based school, and Jefferson Traditional School.
Okay. We're talking with James Chisholm and Kathy Whitmore from the UofL College of Education and Human Development, and we're talking about their project merging Anne Frank with middle school students, basically, and the teachers, and trying to help them learn more about Anne Frank. Is this also a way for students who may not be great at expressing themselves to learn how to do that? Is that part of the project, or is that not
absolutely.
part of the
I
project?
think offering kids arts techniques allows them to, for those kids who have a harder time maybe expressing themselves verbally, whether it's orally or in writing, through typical school types of language, have an opportunity to demonstrate to their teachers that they really are understanding even a very difficult text like Anne Frank. Another thing that we've learned from the kids is that they're making a lot of connections to their contemporary lives and things that are happening in their lives. They don't have the experience, of course, firsthand that Anne Frank had, happily, but they've developed an empathy through understanding her very well that we're seeing translate into issues related to typical things that other teenagers are experiencing here. Violence, perhaps in their community, issues with family members, all sorts of things you would expect kids to be thinking about.
You sort of hit on my next question. I was going to ask, why do you think it's important for U of L to work on this project, and why do you think it's important for middle school kids to learn about Anne Frank and be able to express what they're learning about Anne Frank? Why is that a big deal for U of L and for the students? James, why?
Well, I think, I mean, it seems so obvious to
Maybe
me.
to you.
Right?
See, that's why I asked the question, right?
Right. I mean, we're both very committed to understanding how people learn and how they learn important content and challenging content. So this is a challenging text for everyone to read. It's a challenging and disturbing past for adults as well as middle school learners to encounter. And for many students, this is the first time they ever encounter the Holocaust or learn about it. And sometimes that's done in ways that can be either overly romanticizing. So Anne Frank has this indomitable spirit and found hope in the darkest of times, and students come away with an overly romantic view of her experience. Other times, students are bombarded with graphic images of the Holocaust and death camps and those realities that are part of the history, but can lead to an othering of the experience and an othering of the people who suffered. So it's really a tricky balance to strike and to find in engaging with this work, and we're trying to find the best ways to do that.
And in part because Anne Frank is often the only access young learners have to knowledge about the Holocaust.
Through her diary.
Through the diary, and it's often a required text in middle school or about 8th, 9th grade. I know that's how I learned about the Holocaust, was by reading Anne Frank.
Me too.
And so we have to, if kids are going to continue to read it, and teachers actually are going to continue to feel challenged about how best to teach it, we need to continue to figure that out.
All right, very good. Next steps, real quickly, next steps.
Well, we're working on a book right now that's under review with a publisher in which we document the ways in which the visual arts and the embodied movement really, and risk-taking helped teachers and students to engage with this content in really robust ways. And so we're waiting for feedback on that particular work.
All right, well, good luck with the book.
Thank you very much.
And thanks for working with our school kids. Appreciate it. And thanks to all of you for listening to U of L Today with Mark Hebert on 93.9 The Ville.